Hi, it's Alabama Annie here with another episode of Stories and Songs for you here on YouTube. Now, today I'm going to tell you a story entitled Phone Calls from the Dead. Have any of you ever been contacted by a loved one who has passed away? I know I have. And I think a lot of you, even though you might not admit it outright, you've had experiences. I can almost bet on it. This is the story about a lady. Her first name is Miss Wilma. That's what everyone called her. And in 1971, just before Halloween, the local newspaper did an interview with people who had had paranormal experiences. And she was one of the people they did an article on. And it was kind of written tongue-in-cheek, but Miss Wilma believed every word of it. And I'm just going to read it to you. It's not very long. And then I'll play you a song I wrote by the same title. So, here we go. Now, I was never one to dwell much on the paranormal or the existence of ghosts until just a couple months after my husband Howard passed away. Of course, by then the kids were grown, and I was living alone in the house we'd shared for 37 years, and I was trying to get used to being alone and taking care of things on my own. Howard was a good man. He'd held the same job all those years at the steel mill and provided us a good life. And I stayed home and took care of the cooking and the cleaning and the kids, while he took care of everything mechanical around the place. But after he was gone, with the kids living off other places and their families, I had a lot to take care of and think about. At first, things were going along pretty smoothly. Thank God none of the appliances went out, and I could run my errands, and the plumbing and the fuse box were fine. But I did miss Howard. I missed him every single day, she said. I missed our breakfast together, and the evenings, especially when we'd watch a movie together and eat dinner, or sometimes we'd eat outdoors and go for a walk in the field to watch the sunset. I especially missed him, though, on winter nights. He always said I had the coldest footsies in the world, but I could always warm them. Now, there's a telephone in the kitchen in our house and one in our bedroom. When the kids grew up and moved away, we had the one installed in the bedroom just in case they called us at night with an emergency, and I hadn't disconnected that landline. So about 6 months after Howard was gone, when the telephone rang one cold January night, I leaned over and grabbed it in a flash, thinking I would hear one of the kids saying the grandbabies were sick or something. I glanced at the clock radio beside the telephone to see that it was 3 a.m. But when I said hello, no one said anything, and there was only a lot of static. I said hello a second time. No reply. I thought it might be water in the lines since it had snowed that day. A few nights later, though, another call came again, and it was exactly at 3 a.m. when the telephone rang and startled me awake once more, and I picked up the receiver and said hello. Again, there was only static at first and no voice. I thought I might have a prank caller on the other end of the line, but I said hello the second time, and that's when I heard him. The voice was distant, she said, and it seemed thin and high. It said, "Willie." Now, only one person on this earth ever called me Willie, and that was Howard's pet name for me. "Howard," I said, straining to hear through the static. "Howard, is that you?" I cried, standing up now beside the bed. As Howard said, "Brakes! Fits the brakes!" And the static grew louder and stronger as he said, "Willie," again, and the call faded. Well, I'll tell you, my knees buckled and I dropped the telephone receiver to the floor. I got up, grabbed the receiver up again and put it back to my ear. "Howard," I cried, but the line had gone dead and there was only the dial tone. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I got up and put on some coffee and tried to make sense of what had just happened, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't think in those terms, she said. Days passed. On the following Friday, I drove to town. I went to the bank, I paid some bills, and bought some groceries. Then, on the way home, just as I was rounding a sharp curve in the road, I slowed and applied the brakes. But they felt funny. They squealed. When I pushed the pedal, I was barely able to make it back home safely, but I drove slowly and carefully. I sat in the car for a long time before I got out and went into the house. Sitting there behind that wheel, thinking about that phone call, "You were trying to warn me," I said. I got the brakes fixed that very afternoon, and that was only the first warning Howard gave me. Next thing was the water heater. Only this time, I called one of his friends to come and check it, and he found a frayed wire in the wiring connection, which could have shorted out and started a fire. Then, there was the issue with the big oak tree in our backyard. One night Howard warned me that I should have the tree cut when he called, but I loved that old tree, especially in summer when it put our backyard in deep shade. So, I didn't get it cut right away, but sure enough, that next spring, a big storm came through one morning and took that tree down. Its big limbs barely missed the house. After that, I had all the trees trimmed back, and I never did fail to follow his advice again. She said, "I'm a big believer now that folks can reach out from the other side, and I don't doubt the stories. I've heard them all my life about people reaching out from across the veil to say hello or to warn a loved one of something, or just to check in from time to time. I have a dear friend who claims that her mother comes to sit with her in their kitchen sometimes, and I heard another story about a little girl who passed away and visits her tree swing in the family backyard." There were so many times Howard saved me from big expense and disaster with those late night calls, but over the years, he only called a few more times, and the last one was on the eve of our anniversary, just to say, "Willie, I love you," before the line went dead. So there we have the story, Phone Calls from the Dead. Now I'm going to take you into the den, to the piano, and I am going to play you a song I wrote about this story. It's called Phone Calls from the Dead. If I can change the lighting. There we go. See if I can get it where you can see me and hear the song. I think maybe that should do, sort of. I'll play softly. Telephone would ring. When I'd answer, there'd be static, couldn't hear a thing. It sent a chill right through me with a ringing in my head. Didn't have to think, it was a phone call from the dead. Can you hear me? Telephone would ring. When I'd answer, there'd be static, couldn't hear a thing. You sent a chill right through me with a ringing in my head. I didn't have to think, it was a phone call from the dead. I didn't have to think, it was a phone call from the dead. we have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I don't know if you can hear the rain, but it's still raining outside. This is only one of a couple I'll be doing today, so I'll see you in a while.